black town in the country. It's right across the river from St. Louis. Who's heard of Brooklyn, Illinois? A few people. Okay, I was surprised, right? So I watched them build the Gateway Arch when I was a kid. You can see downtown. It's right across the river from North St. Louis. And my sixth grade teacher had a PhD, Dr. John Williams. My music teacher is in the Jazz Hall of Fame. George Hudson, probably one of the most famous musicians from St. Louis. And he taught at my school, so I was lucky. But I do not get nostalgic for the days of segregation, as you said. But I want to talk about Mill Creek and the culture of Mill Creek, especially music. You were saying that it was called the Harlem of St. Louis. And I think that's very appropriate. When you talk about the history of jazz, we generally think about New Orleans, right? Mm-hmm. And you definitely don't think about St. Louis.
Well,
but Scott Joplin, the famous ragtime musician, he certainly worked in Mill Creek, down where the Turpin family owned several places of business. The first black person to publish a ragtime song was Tom Turpin. Remember the Turpin family? They owned the Rosebud Saloon and other places at 2220 Market Street.
Booker T. Washington. And
they owned the Booker T. Washington Theater, which I have pictures of it. I'm going to talk about it, right? So the culture, the musical culture, was really, it rivaled anything that was going on in New Orleans. And so I think that the way, the fact that we talk about the history of jazz coming from New Orleans is only because they have better PR. Seriously. But when you look at what happened here,
that's right.
It was outstanding. And the whole story is an interesting story and is a tragic story. So I like to talk about the fact that the first black musicians union in the country was right here in St. Louis.
Delmar.
No, before that one. Before that one. So you never even heard of the one I'm going to talk about. But I got documentation. It was Local 44. It was started in 1894. And it was completely, you're talking about Mill Creek being destroyed. First black union was totally destroyed so that nobody even hears about it anymore. The second black union, which was also destroyed, was Local 197, right. Which I'm still a member of the subsidy. You're still in the union?
Yeah.
A couple of us are still musicians in that union. So I want to just start talking. I brought slides, and these are points of discussion. I mean, if you just want to talk about, anybody here can talk about. Gwen is smiling because I stole your picture. I got this from you. I got this from you.
Oh, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Your assistant, Mark.
Oh, okay.
This is a picture of Louis Armstrong. He got married at the home of musician Blanche Smith at 2902 Laclede Avenue in 1942.
Heart of Mill Creek.
Yeah, it's something. I do genealogy as a hobby. It keeps me out of trouble. And I looked up Blanche Smith to see who she was. She was a musician. So she was a musician in Mill Creek who I'd never heard of. And Louis Armstrong got married at her house. So this lady that he married, he had been married, I think, 4 times. But when he met her, he fell in love with this woman. He says that these were the happiest days of his life with this lady. And he got married to her right here in Mill Creek. It's a fascinating story. And if you ever look at a documentary on Louis Armstrong, you'll see he talks about her openly. And they lived in New York, but they got married right here in town.
2900 Laclede is right here on campus now.
Is that right?
So is my home, our home.
Is that right? You lived?
The soccer field sits on.
Okay, all right. Well, there's a famous trumpet player, Clark Terry. Who's heard of Clark Terry?
I have.
Everybody's heard,
Know
almost a
him
lot of
personally.
people.
Knew
Played-
him personally.
Played with Count Basie, Duke Ellington. Played on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson for years. I used to watch him when I was growing up.
Humble.
He played in my old high school teacher, George Hudson. He got his start in George Hudson's band. So I got a chance to meet. I knew Clark Terry. I knew him very well. We were actually buddies. And he lived in Mill Creek. I looked up a cop doing genealogy stuff. I looked up his draft registration card. And he says he lived at 2913 Lawton Avenue,
That's right.
which I try to find it on a map. Lawton Avenue, I can't find it because it's been bulldozed. It doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't even exist on a map, and it was one of the finer streets in Mill Creek. So when you think of an erased community, the thought of erasing the best street completely. Now, a lot of streets are still there. Market Street is there, Pine, Jefferson, all of those major streets are there. But Lawton has the finest, grandest homes, and some of the people that we know, musicians and lawyers and mayors, lived on that street, and it doesn't exist. It's in the middle of what is now Wells Fargo, that whole complex on the street.
From
doesn't-
Grand to the riverfront.
It doesn't even exist anymore.
Okay. I saw Dr.